A British think tank says Muslims being radicalized in prison pose a major terror threat to the UK. The Royal United Services Institute suggests hundreds of convicts set to be released over the next few years could potentially launch attacks. And as RT's Laura Emmett found out, there may be no way to identify them.
5 years on from the 7/7 London bombings, the threat of terrorism in the UK is very much alive. Back in 2005, 4 British-born Muslims blew themselves up in coordinated attacks, killing 52 people, motivated by the UK's involvement in the Iraq War. Now, a security think tank study reveals the threat of a new generation of homegrown terrorists.
Well, we reckon there are about 8,000 Muslims in jail in Great Britain out of a population, including Scotland, of 93,000. And the evidence from staff, which is based on conversations with Muslim inmates, is about 1 in 10 have been targeted over the last 3 or 4 years for radicalisation.
If those attempts at radicalisation are successful, 800 potential attackers could be released within the next 10 years, and they won't have previous terror-related convictions. That's even more dangerous when you take into account the shifting nature of the terrorist threat. Instead of large-scale coordinated attacks, experts fear more terrorist attacks by so-called lone wolves, committed to violent jihad, poorly trained and unaffiliated to any terrorist organisation, so impossible to detect.
Now we see the potential the evolution of the threat in having more lone individuals, ideologically driven, obviously very with high motivation, but rudimentary in skills. For example, a lot of these individuals have never been in one of the training camps, and this is a difference when compared to the threat to the previous threat. If even one of these is successful in striking, for example, in a shopping centre or, I don't know, a stadium or something like that, it may well at the same time create a sort of panic and psychosis.
It's a trend that, according to RUSI, is already apparent in the US. Pakistani-American Faisal Shahzad's recent attempt to bomb Times Square showed the emergence of untrained but highly radicalised attackers. The Ministry of Justice is anxious to point out that holding radical views doesn't necessarily lead to criminal behaviour and says it's closely monitoring prisoners of concern.
All our high-security prisons operate enhanced monitoring and intelligence gathering on those convicted or suspected of involvement in terrorism or extremism, and staff are trained to recognise and deal with behaviours which are of concern.
But anti-extremist group Minhaj-ul-Quran says more must be done in terms of education within the community.
That has to be dealt with long-term education and clarification of the misconceptions these people have. The government needs to employ chaplains who are moderate, who have the moderate viewpoint, in order to tackle these issues inside the prisons before they come out. It will be already too late when they come out.
It's impossible to tell who's been radicalised in jail, but what is known is that by April next year, 100 convicted terrorists will have been released from high-security prisons into lower-security hostels. As terrorists take a more scattergun approach, the reasoning is that eventually one of these lone wolves will successfully take out a high-profile target. And in an open society, experts say there's only so much the government can do to protect the public. Laura Emmett, RT, London.